Should I keep the hat? Hi everyone, I'm Sean, and today I'm going to be reviewing 3 books by George MacDonald Fraser. So let's get into it. Okay, first off, I found out about Fraser. He's a Scottish writer, I think, from the top 1000 book list, which is not facing the front, but it's right here. 1000 books to read before you die. George MacDonald Fraser's book Flashman is on the top 1000 list, and Flashman is the first book in the series. So I went to the library, this was a few years ago, birds. And they did not have Flashman, but they did have Flashman and the Dragon, birds. But Flashman and the Dragon is like book 6 in the series. So usually I would not read it, but I kind of thought, oh well, since I'm going to have to read Flashman, I may as well read this, Flashman and the Dragon, book 6, just to get an idea of the series. And basically, when I started, I did not know at all what to expect. So I went into the book blind, not knowing anything about the plot or the character or anything. And I quickly found out that Flashman is very politically incorrect. He's basically a thorough racist, which I know right away this is going to set up red flags for many people. But I have a pretty high tolerance for that. I like politically incorrect humor. All kinds of things from like Mel Brooks to, oh, what's the comedian's name? From Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. George Carlin. I like George Carlin. I like Mel Brooks. I just like politically incorrect humor. My own books have a lot of politically incorrect humor. So I have a very high tolerance level for that. And early on in the book, Flashman and the Dragon, I was liking it. And there were many laugh out loud moments due to kind of the racism, the political incorrectness. I thought it was real funny. But there's something about a law of diminishing returns. So as the book went on, the racist humor became less and less funny, and it became more just intolerable. And again, I don't want to pick fights here because I know some people do not find any humor whatsoever in racism, and that's fine, that's understandable, but it is also a form of art. I mean, it is, I don't know, I'm just kind of a fan of political incorrectness. But as the book went on, it just became less and less funny, less and less enjoyable, less and less tolerable. Because at first it's kind of like a shock value, like, oh, I can't believe he said that, that's crazy. But it just gets less and less funny, so before long, I was just tired of Flashman, just because of his constant racism, and, you know, I didn't like that. Now, something about the series is Flashman, he's kind of this British military officer who's known as like this war hero. He's gone around to all these different places in the world, and by his exploits, he's kind of amassed a legendary reputation. I mean, he's like one of the British military's finest officers. But the truth of it is that Flashman is a notorious coward. And I liked that character trait a lot. Just this kind of action hero, kind of James Bond-esque hero who is not a hero, he's a coward. And I really liked that part of it. I thought that was very fresh and very enjoyable. I just like how this guy's always kind of stumbling into these situations, and his natural instinct is to run the other way. But one way or another, he kind of ends up accidentally becoming the hero. And I just liked that. Another thing about Flashman, he's definitely an anti-hero, and one of the things about his character is he is a terrible womanizer. And I did not really find it too distracting in Flashman and the Dragon. It was definitely a part of his character, but it wasn't a huge deal. My bigger problem was kind of with the racism, which, again, at the start of the book, I thought it was funny. As it went on, less funny. However, toward the end, I really started liking the book again. So, about 20 pages in, I began to think this could be like one of my favorite authors, George MacDonald Fraser, and Flashman could be one of my favorite series, because I was really into it at first, but as it went on, my opinion of the book began to slip. And more than that, I just thought the writing was pretty dull in a way. It was pretty boring, and it felt like after that strong start, it was just kind of going nowhere. It wasn't as funny, and I wanted to give up on it several times, but I kept reading because I was just like, come on, this book has to have potential. And I will say that by the end of it, I was really happy I continued on, because towards the end, I thought it was funny again. But there was a good stretch from about 50, 75 pages, to the latter half of the book, so like 300 pages or so. That stretch I thought was real difficult to get through, but the final 50 pages or so kind of redeemed the book for me. And I forget my rating for Flashman and the Dragon. I may have given it 4 stars, maybe 3, I don't know. But I liked it well enough that the next time I went to the bookstore, I saw the bookstore had like 6 Flashman books, including the first one. So I bought all of them because I was like, well, I liked them. I liked the first book, or not the first book, but Flashman and the Dragon. I liked that pretty well. So I was like, I'll give the other books a chance. So then I went back and I read Flashman, the first book. And I thought I had a pretty good idea of George MacDonald Fraser's writing. I knew he could be pretty slow, pretty boring, but there would be many laugh-out-loud moments. And I also knew Flashman's character pretty well, so I was like, okay, I could stomach him more this time. But I had a big problem with Flashman, the first book. And I wish I could read it. I don't actually have a copy now because I burned it. That should give you an idea of what I thought of the book. But basically, since I can't read off the sections I really did not like, what I will say is there's this part where Flashman goes to India and he literally buys a sex slave, basically. It's like this, I forget how old she is. She's like 14 or 15, and Flashman at the time is like 18, 19, something like that. But he buys this slave woman and of course uses her for that. I mean, it's very express that he uses her for that. And that, I just did not like that at all. Because I can get him being a womanizer and all that. I mean, that's kind of okay. Him cheating on his wife back home, that's still also okay. But purchasing this female child as a sex slave and using her, that's just intolerable. And so that really, no. But it goes on from there. Flashman also comes into possession of a number of slaves, and he talks about how he whips them for his own pleasure and for their own good, he says. And he's like, look, this is going to be an example for the rest of you guys. I'm going to beat this slave. And he does that, and it's very clear in the book that he does it for his own amusement and because they deserve it, basically, for their own good, and because he just wants to be treated with respect and all this stuff. And that is just an irredeemable thing for a hero to do. I could get him being a coward, I can even put up a bit with him being a racist, but being a slaver and just whipping slaves just because he's sadistic, at that point, he is completely unlikable. But it goes on even more from there. He goes to this tribe in Afghanistan, and this tribal leader basically gives him a woman that he has eyes for. And so later that night, Flashman is there with a woman, and it's very clear in the book that he rapes her. And at that point, I just could not read this series anymore. All of the Flashman books, he was dead to me. Because, like I said, I can get being a racist. That, at times he was funny. I liked that he was a coward, but being a slaver and being a rapist, it's just no. It's done. So I took all of the Flashman books I had, which was like 6 of them, and I burned them because I just could not put up with him being a slaver and a rapist. At that point, it's just no. There's nothing I can do that would justify reading it anymore. It doesn't matter how funny parts of the books are. Just knowing he did that, it's just completely irredeemable. So anyway, I'm pretty sure I gave Flashman, the first book, a 1-star rating because I just found that completely intolerable. I did have this other book, though, The Pyrates, which is another book by George MacDonald Fraser. I hoped that maybe since it's a different series of books, I think it's just a standalone book, I was hoping, well, maybe this one may be okay. It's a different character, even though it's pirates, which is a pretty much a red flag that it's going to be some pretty intolerable stuff. And the cover is pretty risky too, or risque too, because it has this like big busted woman, and the Flashman books are the same way. But still, I already had the book, so I was like, well, I may as well keep it just to give it a try. Basically, I went into this book with a very short leash on it because I just had a real low tolerance for George MacDonald Fraser anymore after what he did with Flashman. And I really got about 25 pages in until there's kind of this main character. I forget his name and I don't want to look it up right now, but he's kind of like the White Knight character. He's supposed to be the good guy in the book. And basically, this guy is asked about Madagascar, and this guy says, oh yes, it's this savage people who live there and all this stuff. And so right there, you're getting into racism. And this is a problem I have with Fraser's books overall, is that he doesn't give any idea that the racism in the books are wrong or that they are not views that he personally holds. There's nothing in his books that sheds any kind of bright light on the local people wherever he goes, whether it's China or India or Africa or whatever. It's always coming from the perspective of these racist characters. And what that kind of does in the end is it seems less like it is those characters' racist views and like it's more George MacDonald Fraser's racist views, and he is using his characters as kind of to live vicariously through them to push his own views of British superiority over these inferior peoples, whether it's India or China or Madagascar or whatever. So it seems like when you add everything together that it's not the character's racism, it's Fraser's. And there's really nothing to counter that because all of his books feature racist characters and there's nothing about it to say it's wrong. So when I saw that in this book, this character just referring to people in Madagascar as savage aborigines and all this, I was just like, nope, this isn't going to be any better than the Flashman books. So it's at that point I pretty much was like, okay, nope, done with this book, 1 star. But it goes deeper than that because I have said that the Flashman books I did not think are very particularly well written, but this book really stands out. The worst thing about this book is use of adverbs. And Stephen King has said that the road to hell is paved with adverbs. I'm not a big fan of Stephen King, but I pretty much agree with him on this. Adverbs are not good in writing because they just weaken the sentence, and Fraser uses them a lot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the adverbs in the first 2 chapters to give you an idea of how poorly written this is. So here we go. First off, instead of using said, Fraser uses cried a lot. And that's a red flag. I hate how many writers try to avoid said. And you'll see what Fraser does. But here we go. Cried the burly captain instead of said. Next page. Inquired the captain. Said the commandant defensively. Said the captain thoughtfully. Said the commandant quickly. Cried the captain. They muttered severally. He lisped. Growled Firebeard. Instead of just said, growled Firebeard. Whispered Calico Jack. He concluded loudly. Hissed Sheba. That's another thing. The black female character here is named Sheba, which itself seems racist, but there you go. Hissed Sheba. Gasped Sheba. He bellowed. Cried Bilbo. She gasped instead of just said. Now we're on chapter 2. Said he politely. He blurted out. He said tartly. Said Captain Avery reverently. Cried Pepys lightly. Said the captain confidently. Said Pepys sarcastically. He said briskly. Snapped Mr. Pepys. Exclaimed King Charles. Marveled His Majesty. Muttered the king absently. Said the Duke darkly. Mused the king. Said the Duke triumphantly. Sighed the king. He said coolly. Said the king tolerantly. Snapped the Duke. Said the Majesty genially. Said the merry monarch with polite interest. Said Captain Avery respectfully. He said gravely. Said the king hurriedly. He said heartily. Said the king rather wistfully. Said the king in wonder. She snarled. Cried the fat man. Cried Fatso. Said Blood innocently. Cried the fat chap. Groaned the fat man. Lady cried out fondly. He murmured. She cried. Spluttered the fat man. Roared the newcomer. Said Blood reassuringly. Cried the lady. That is just the first 2 chapters. Those are adverbs, and they are just terrible. It's terrible writing. And that's really, that alone gets this book a 1-star rating. So, those are my views on George MacDonald Fraser's books. I still kind of liked Flashman and the Dragon, because at that point I didn't know that Flashman was a rapist and a slaver. I thought, okay, he's just a racist, he's a womanizer, he's a coward, and at times it's very funny. So that book I kind of liked decently well. Flashman, finding out Flashman is a slaver and a rapist, no, I'm done with the series. This book is clearly the work, I hope, of a young writer, and it was just terribly written. So, all in all, that's my thoughts on George MacDonald Fraser's books. I'm definitely not planning on reading any more of his books after that. Have you read any of his books? What did you think? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.